Story 1. A quick 7-day trip to Maui in February a couple of years ago with one of my teenage daughters, who happened to be free the week I had off. Work was grinding me down and I needed a break. My wife and the rest of the family couldn't go. They were working or in school. The tickets were expensive, $850 each for bare-bones economy, narrow, rock-hard seats. It was a 12-hour flight that was packed to the brim, and I was getting bedsores by the time we arrived. We rented snorkeling gear and a car and spent every day from dawn to dusk snorkeling, sitting on the beaches, and hiking in the mountains. We drove the road to Hana, visited the 7 sacred pools and Haleakala Volcano National Park at sunset, and took tons of photos. We ate spam musubi for breakfast, poke and somen noodles for lunch, and loco moco for supper. We slept like babies with the windows open wide in the cool nighttime breezes. It was the best $5,000 I ever spent. It was exactly what I needed at that point in my life. Story 2. I spent $300 on a mule, a living, 4-hooved, long-eared mule. We raise cattle, so a protection mule was a good excuse, but really I fell in love with him. He is huge and sassy. He will steal your hat and run away. He has a ninja mode where he can sneak up on you just to breathe down your neck or startle you. He does keep the coyotes away. He has proved priceless because he eats thistle. When we leased the land for our cattle, the pastures had been neglected and were in bad shape. Thistle is a spiky plant that spreads across the pasture, choking out grasses. Cows will not eat it, and it is very hard to get rid of. To our surprise, the mule cleared nearly all the thistle in a matter of months by eating the flowers from the center. He saved us an enormous amount of money and labor. We were able to avoid using chemical weed killers, which we did not want to do. Probably the best investment in our whole cattle raising experience. Edit. Loki says thanks for all the sweet comments and awards. He will definitely get extra carrots tomorrow. Story 3. My litter robot. Yes, I spent $600 on an automatic litter box. My house never smells, I do not have to scoop litter, and I only have to empty the drawer once a week. It is definitely worth it to me. Story 4. I spent too much money on a big treadmill for a very small apartment, but I have run 15 to 25 kilometers on it every week for the past several years, and it has been incredibly helpful both physically and mentally. Story 5. Artwork. Can I always afford it? No, but my walls are full of original art. 90% of it is by local artists. It makes me happy to look at, and I am sure it made the artists proud too. Story 6. Board games are expensive but bring great joy. Story 7. I went to a Renaissance fair with my husband and some friends. It was his first time, and he is fairly introverted, so while he enjoyed watching everyone dress up and act old-timey, he did not really participate. When we went to buy our first beer, the wench tried to sell him one of those large mugs that looks like carved wood but is actually plastic. Cost $100. You get free refills, but we were not planning on drinking $100 worth of beer that day. I could tell by the look on his face that he wanted it. He looked like a little kid at Disney World. Without thinking, I whipped out my credit card and spent $100 on a shoddy plastic mug. He spent the day proudly carrying the mug, took some big gulps, and cheered, "Huzzah," once or twice. This might not seem like much, but for my quiet, gentle giant, it was huge. I manage the finances in our relationship, and I am constantly cracking down on wasteful spending, so we were both surprised I made such a foolish purchase. For years later, we still have that mug. He grins and teases me about my impulse, and I think about how much I love that big galoot. Story 8. A front-seat helicopter tour of Kauai for my wife and me cost $800. It was totally worth it. Story 9. My couch. I moved out of my mom's house in 2019, before the coronavirus disease 2019 pandemic, and I always wanted a good couch. I went to many furniture stores and looked at many different models before choosing mine. It is from IKEA. A 3-seater, long enough for someone to sleep on. Mine is gray, but they also had a black cover, so I am thinking about getting that one. It is extremely comfortable. I wanted a couch where you could relax and enjoy how fluffy it is without losing the ability to sit upright. On some couches you cannot lean against the backrest and still keep a straight spine. You can sit on the backrest and the armrests. The armrests are flat, so you can put a cup of tea on them. It is not too low, so you do not feel like sitting on the ground, though I sometimes feel that way compared to how much I love this couch. You can really sink into it. It also looks simple and clean. If you want my recommendation, buy the Vimmel couch from IKEA. Edit. Oh my first award. Thank you. Story 10. The General Electric Opal Nugget Ice Maker costs more than my car payment, but I love Nugget Ice and use it every day. Story 11. I've been a fat guy all my life. Really fat. Dressing comfortably was always my preference because being stylish just wasn't an option at my size. This caused anxiety at any social event that required dressing up. When I realized I had 4 weddings of close friends coming up within the year, I decided to bite the bullet and get some decent formal clothes. I spent $800 on a suit jacket, $250 on 2 pairs of dress pants, and a little over $300 for 3 shirts and 3 silk ties that were between $70 and $100 each. I had all my measurements taken and had everything tailored to my exact specifications. Did a fitting and had a second round of alterations on the pants so they actually looked decent, even though I wore them under my gut. People were floored when I showed up to the first wedding. I received so many compliments and double takes. Being introduced to new people felt completely different. I felt impressive. Some of those weddings were the best times of my life, due in no small part to how the clothes looked and made me feel. Some friends have large pictures from their weddings hanging on their walls, and I don't cringe in embarrassment when I see myself in them. Those clothes cost more than I had ever spent on clothing in any 10-year period, and they were worth every penny. Story 12. $120 for a towel heater. I will never dry off with a cold towel again. Story 13. I finally found the motorcycle I wanted years ago but could not get. It was not running, but after investing about $3,500 and doing a full frame-up restoration and custom work, I now have a better version of the bike I wanted. I did everything myself. Full paint job including tank, frame, and fenders, a complete engine rebuild, and a remade wiring harness. Everything was done in-house. I invested about $3,500, though the bike is only worth about $1,500 on a good day. It is mine and I built it. Update. The bike is 99.5% complete. I still have a few odds and ends, including a couple of 30mm ammo cans I want to paint and mount on the back, and I am reconfiguring the foot controls to forward controls. Being 6 foot 5 inches tall, the stock placement is not comfortable. Story 14. Stax headphones cost about $800 in 1987, but I still use them and they sound unbelievably good. Story 15. I got into a fight with my brother, so I found a game he had backed on Kickstarter, Space Haven, and saw that for $360 I could write a pre-made character biography that would randomly appear. I pledged that tier and wrote a character biography using his name, making him a flaming jerk. I have never played the game and do not want to. Story 16. I spent $3,000 to get my wife front row seats to meet the Backstreet Boys. It was the best thing that ever happened to her. The smile on her face after the show and the look of pure bliss on someone who often suffers from anxiety were worth every cent. Story 17. The extra I pay in rent for a water view is completely worth it. Story 18. We dined at a Michelin-starred restaurant in Milan and had an 18-course meal with wine pairings for about $400. The restaurant is Gioia. It is vegetarian and appears to still exist and is not much more expensive than when I visited 10 years ago. Story 19. Back in 2017, my family went on a road trip to Minnesota to visit my Nana shortly before she passed away. During our stay, my little sister and I went to the Mall of America and bought whatever we wanted. Big ice cream cones, souvenirs from the Lego store, tickets to the aquarium, tickets for every indoor amusement park ride, a doll from the American Girl store, and an expensive lunch in the store with the new doll sitting at the table with us. I spent over $300 on that one mall trip, but it was one of our best shopping days ever. We still talk about it to this day. Story 20. €600 for an hour of laps, 3 sessions of 20 minutes each, around the Nürburgring in Germany. It was open in the off-season and there was not a single other car near me the whole time. 10 out of 10. One of the most thrilling experiences of my life. I rented a car at the track, which is why it costs so much. You can bring your own car or rent one there, but they do not allow commercial rental cars. Individual laps were, I think, €20 each at the time. Story 21. Due to poor insulation and the distance from the water heater, my shower is never properly warm in winter. I recently bought a single-point tankless water heater dedicated to my shower. It was the best $150 I ever spent. I could not really afford it and I did not need it, but I absolutely love it. Story 22. When I was younger, I received about $15,000. I was not very careful with the money, and other than putting $5,000 down on a car, I spent it here and there. Most of the money went to friends in need. I paid one friend's power bill just before it was shut off. I helped another friend keep her water on. I could never hold on to money for long, but I do not regret having spent it helping friends. Story 23. I just bought a treadmill. There's a perfectly good street outside where I could run, or I could pay for a gym membership for years. But now I can get a run in during my daughter's nap time when it's cold, or when I only have 30 minutes and driving to and from the gym would eat up half that time. I could have made do without this expense, but I really love it. Story 24. The summer after I graduated from high school, I won a decent amount of money playing online poker. Since I was not going to college and all of my friends were, I decided to buy them ridiculous going-away gifts. Among the gifts were a carpet, a mailbox, and a toilet seat. The most expensive and absurd gift I bought on a whim was a massive wheel of cheese that cost between $200 and $300. Little did I know at the time that the cheese wheel would start a yearly event called Cheesegiving. Our entire friend group, which is much larger now and includes spouses and children, gets together to celebrate and partake in cheesy goodness. This year, our 17th, was unfortunately all virtual because of the coronavirus disease 2019, and I genuinely hope it never ends. Story 25. I received $27,000 and spent it on a solo cross-country road trip that led me to move to the opposite side of the country from everyone I have ever known. I was in a dark place mentally. My original plan was to find a place to end my story, but the trip helped me reconsider, so I have no regrets. Edit. I did not expect this to receive so much attention. Thank you for the awards. I am sorry if I cannot reply to them all. I am currently swamped. Story 26. Travel. I have never regretted spending money on travel. Those are some of my favorite memories. Cannot wait to travel again. Story 27. The Dyson hairdryer is worth every penny. I have long hair down to my waist, and it takes me about 3 minutes to dry it. Story 28. I bought my own tuxedo. It is about $1,000 to $1,200 minimum by the time you add good shoes, a shirt, a bow tie, and so on. I hardly wear it, but I look much better in it than in a rental. I also spent $20 on a mustard yellow hat that has big cheese stitched in red. I only wear it for the really big occasions. Edit. I included a picture of the hat. Edit 2. You can buy these at Murray's Cheese Shop in some Kroger markets, and they are also available online. Story 29. Exactly 1 year ago, I got my private pilot license. A lot of money went into it, and it now costs a great deal to maintain by flying. I do not regret it at all. It is a very cool feeling to go flying. As an excuse to fly, my friend and I started posting flying videos on YouTube so we can laugh at ourselves. Our channel name references visual flight rules. Story 30. I bought a $300 hand-sewn Starfleet jacket. I went to a convention with a seamstress and had her inspect the jacket. Her confirmation that it was quality work was the deciding factor. I spent about 30 minutes on the phone with the bank trying to prove that I had deliberately spent $300 in a single transaction at a convention 3 hours from my home. Story 31. My fiancé and I spent nearly $3,000 on a kitchen table and a coffee table from Carolina Game Tables. They are the kind with removable tops and a board game space underneath. They are comparatively plain compared to some you see online. No lights or universal serial bus ports. No cubbies, drawers, or cup holders. They are solidly built from solid wood. They have been fantastic. We use them all the time. One unexpected use was Lego. I bought a Lego set and started building it on the coffee table, and when I needed to stop for the night, I just put the lid on until I was ready to continue. I do not regret a cent. Story 32. Back in high school, I was about to go on my first date. I had saved about $600 to make sure I had enough. The day before the date, she gave me a letter and broke up with me. As a teenager, I had little control over my emotions. In my family, we were taught that guys should not cry, so I had no way to process it. After school, I went to a 7-Eleven, bought 2 large Slurpees and 6 hot dogs, got a prepaid card, and bought a bunch of action figures from the National Entertainment Collectibles Association. I actually had a good weekend. I splurged, got into action figure collecting, and practiced stop motion. That led me to pursue a career in animation. I am about to finish my degree and am ready to apply to stop motion studios. Edit. I just got back on after finishing work. Thank you for the support. The reason the $600 was date money is that my brother and my best friend recommended taking extra cash in case she wanted to do more activities or to cover costs instead of having to wash dishes or say no. I earned the cash by doing small jobs and helping people with heavy lifting. My ex and I did things together like walking her home from school, getting her coffee before class, and hanging out on campus. She hid the relationship from her parents, and after the breakup, I saw more of who she was and realized the relationship was very toxic. I am in my last classes before I graduate, and I decided my senior film will be stop motion, which is a daunting task, but I have prepared and gathered everything I need. Living in Los Angeles gives me access to many studios for internships and job applications. I am building a portfolio to showcase my stop motion and visual effects work using Adobe After Effects. I took courses in 3-dimensional and 2-dimensional animation but struggled until I took an experimental course. One assignment required a technique called replacement animation, so I used action figures and did some stop motion. My professor praised the frame-by-frame poses and said it was impressive that I captured the movement. Right now, internship positions are slowed because of the coronavirus disease 2019 pandemic, and my classmates are disappointed that some studios are limiting or pausing internships. It is difficult, but it gives me time to do more stop-motion work, refine my skills, and try new methods and techniques. Story 33. I bet 2 50-year-old men $200 each that they would not kiss each other in a bar in a deeply red Midwestern town. Yes, they did it for 60 seconds. Story 34. I bought a $350 Lego Ghostbusters Firehouse set 5 years ago. I was a huge Lego fan in the 1980s and loved Ghostbusters. When they announced the set, I told my wife I was buying it. Ridiculous expense be damned. It is displayed in my home office and will never come down. Image not shown. Yes, it is dusty because we just had work done that made a mess. Story 35. I think I spent about $1,000 on gifts last holiday season, including Secret Santa exchanges on Imager. Last year I got a very well-paying job, and I am glad to finally be able to give back. Story 36. My wife and I were on our honeymoon in London in 2016. We had just received an influx of cash from friends and family, so we went to dinner at the Savoy Grill. They offered an absurdly overpriced tasting menu with optional wine pairings. We ended up spending about $600, and it was, honestly, the best meal I have ever had. The service was exceptional, with little stories about each course and its accompanying wine, and the timing was perfect. It was a fantastic experience from top to bottom, and since we were treating ourselves on our honeymoon, it was the only time we were likely to do it. Story 37. I spent $56,000 on college for a degree I do not use, but I met my husband there, so I cannot complain. If I divide that over the almost 25 years we have been married and consider that he is a great man, it is a pretty good deal. Story 38. I visited the National Basketball Association finals while interning in the United States. I am originally from Germany. Tickets cost $300 each. I had to drive back 3 hours from Cleveland to Detroit at night to show up at work the next day. But I will never forget Kevin Durant hitting the three-point shot 45 seconds before the end. Story 39. This may not feel like much to some, but it was important for me. I got divorced in my late 20s, and I bought an eHarmony subscription to help me date again. This was before free apps were common. It cost more than I could afford at the time, but it helped me realize I was wanted and that people would be happy to get to know me. It helped me move on from an emotionally abusive relationship and repair my sense of self-worth. Story 40. A business class ticket for a 14-hour flight made a huge difference to my trip. I ate great food and slept very well. I did not need to waste a day recovering. Story 41. This may not seem like a lot of money to some, but I weighed 287 pounds. I lost 100 pounds, and my reward was a $300 pair of Fry boots. I had been drooling over them for years and finally scrimped and saved to buy them. I told my husband it was my food money. I laughed. It was actually my cigarette money. I had quit smoking a year before that, but still faithfully put away $7 a day. I figured that I could always find cigarette money when I smoked, so I would keep finding it to save. I bought a Nintendo Wii that way too. I have never regretted using those boots. I love them. Let me add a note. I had help losing the weight. I had lap band surgery, which in itself is another struggle. The weight came off pretty fast, and now it is a bit of a struggle to keep it off. My greatest fear is gaining it back. I have a couple of sisters who had gastric bypass and gained their weight back, so that terrifies me. I am still about a size 14, which to me is healthy. I am happy with that. Story 42. I paid our full $8,000 healthcare deductible to send my wife to rehab. We are getting divorced, and my lawyer said I did not have to pay for it, but she would not have been able to do it otherwise. That amount is a small price to pay for her hopeful sobriety and treatment of her mental health issues. Story 43. In-home euthanasia for my best friend and companion. I did not have the money for it, and the coronavirus disease 2019 outbreak meant I could not have friends there with me, but I could not bear to see her go on a cold metal table. The veterinarian came to my apartment and gave me as much time as I needed. I read a letter I had written and sang to Zoe during her final moments while she lay on my lap the entire time. 10 out of 10. The best way to do the worst thing. Story 44. A friend spent $30 on a jukebox to play I Whip My Hair Back and Forth on loop for an hour in a bar. The bartender unplugged the machine. Story 45. I spent about $6,000 on a master of ceremonies and disc jockey for my wedding. He was the most professional master of ceremonies I have ever met. He coordinated the sound with the videographer and the caterers for the speeches, pre-planned the music, and mixed songs to perfect lengths. I did not worry about a thing on the day. Story 46. My older sister is obsessed with the Witcher games, so I paid the voice actor who plays the main character, Geralt, to wish her a happy birthday. Update. I did not expect this to blow up. For those who asked, it cost around €40 on Cameo, but I am a very broke student, so for me that is expensive. I guess some people consider it wasted money because it is not physical and it is just a guy talking. I feel like it is cooler than having her little sister tell her every year how much she appreciates her. The voice actor seems like a really nice guy. He even made the effort to pronounce her name correctly. We speak Dutch and her name is Joke, as silly as that sounds. Update 2. Since a friend told me my post is getting attention, if you know us personally, please do not mention it to her. She does not use Reddit and her birthday is only in a few weeks. Update 3. So many of these comments are sweet and funny. I will definitely show them to her on her birthday. Story 47. I bought a new Toyota Camry in 2016. Everyone told me I was crazy. We had an accident on Thanksgiving in 2020 with a drunk driver. That car saved my husband's life and mine. I do not regret it at all. Story 48. I am a graduate student. I bought a globe for $200 that opens to store my alcohol. No regrets. Story 49. My first university degree was paid for by my parents, and I do not work in that field. I returned to study the degree I wanted despite people saying it would be a waste of my potential. I now work in that field and love it. Moving away from home was one of the best things that happened to me. It allowed me to grow a lot as a person. I also have a road bike that cost $4,000, and I love every second on it. Story 50. I pay the adoption fee for the oldest or longest resident cat at shelters and cat rescues. I think I am up to about $8,000 in adoption fees. A bit of background. My job requires extensive travel, about 200 days per year, and one of my hobbies is visiting cat cafes. I have been to 56 around the world. Because I earned a lot of money, received a per diem, had access to catering 3 times a day, and lived very frugally, I had a lot of extra cash. I would visit cat cafes, which are usually partnered with rescue groups, or go to local shelters. I spent time with the cats and anonymously paid the adoption fee for the cat who was the oldest or had been there the longest. A few times I paid for transportation arrangements for cats from high-kill shelters as well. Sometimes, when we stayed in hotels in small, low-income towns, I would leave $100 at a small restaurant where I ate. I always slipped out before they noticed. Thanks for the support, but please consider donating to your local shelter and trap-neuter return groups instead. They need it far more than I do. If you cannot donate, consider fostering, offering support through social media by boosting posts when animals are at risk of euthanasia and need help being pulled, or donating clean bedding you no longer need. Above all, spay and neuter pets and community animals. You can also call your local veterinarian and ask if they have a fund you can donate to for owners who cannot afford unexpected procedures, and whose only other option might be euthanasia. Story 51. I paid $500 for a home inspection. It revealed many problems that would have cost us thousands of dollars to fix. Always get an inspection. Story 52. I was engaged to my high school sweetheart when I was in the military. She had about $5,000 in credit card debt that had been hanging over her, so I took care of it for her during my first tour in Iraq. I had no bills or obligations, so why not? I spent another $4,000 to $5,000 when I came home on leave mid-tour and furnished our apartment for her before returning to my deployment. When my deployment ended, I learned from my sister that other men had been seeing my fiancée, and one had been living in the apartment with her for the better part of 6 months. When she found out I was back, she ghosted me and changed the locks. Her mother apologized to me in the neighborhood grocery store. I regretted it for a long time and was mostly angry, but I do not regret it anymore. It was a far less painful lesson than the ones I have seen men in their 40s come to terms with. At least I learned my lesson in my 20s. Story 53. I spent $9,000 on a hot tub and its installation. I use it probably twice a day, and for those 30 to 40 minutes I am almost completely pain-free, sometimes bordering on euphoria. Update. For those concerned about my fertility, I do not want any more children, except pets. Hopefully my nearly grown children will leave the nest soon. They would probably tell you having my deoxyribonucleic acid is a mixed blessing at best. Clarification. I meant fertility, not sexual acts. I apologize to anyone who was offended. Most of my offensive comments are intentional. Story 54. When I tell people, they say I overspent or that it was wasted. I spent around $3,000 on my parents' 25th anniversary. I gave them 25 gifts, one each day, and the gifts in the last few days were quite grand. Their reaction made it all worthwhile. Story 55. I bet a few $100s on the opposition when my team was in the grand final. We won and I was still very happy. I was not literally playing on the team. I have just been a lifelong supporter. Story 56. My wedding dress, probably. If you count waste as only wearing it for 12 hours, it cost about $650. But it is the most beautiful thing I have worn or ever will wear. Story 57. My first paycheck, I bought a $900 wedding cake. My brother and I had no way to get it home because it did not fit on our skateboards, so we had a cake fight in the parking lot. My brother passed away shortly afterward. I still think about that day whenever I am sad. Edit for everyone asking. I worked as a window cleaner. I would rappel down the sides of buildings more than 30 stories high. Story 58. I finally spent a lot of money and bought a very pricey Predator 1440 monitor for my personal computer. Wow, it was worth it. Graphics processing units and frame rates are what I thought I wanted, but oddly the best upgrade for video quality is the display. Who knew? Story 59. I spent some savings on a really nice used motorcycle about 2 months into the 2020 lockdown in May 2020. I rode every weekend on back roads into the country until winter arrived. Kept me sane and was very therapeutic. I don't regret spending the money at all. It is currently winter, so I have the bike but can't ride until it warms up again. I am going a little stir-crazy, but on the first warm day I will ride. Story 60. My Nintendo Switch is the Animal Crossing edition, and I just needed it. Story 61. I bought kitty ear headphones. I am not a streamer. I am a man and I like them. Story 62. This is not my story, but a close friend's. She grew up lower middle class, so financial literacy was not her strong suit. She was a thrifter and always had a great sense of style. She started working in oil and gas straight out of high school and made serious money, so she began buying high-end designer items. A few years later, she was spending heavily because money and life were good. Then 2008 hit. She lost her job and had no marketable skills. Louis Vuitton had a program where you could trade in older limited edition pieces for a newer bag of similar value. My friend went into the store to trade in a few bags and then sell the newer ones. She bought a small coin purse for about $300, which was not a lot, but she was essentially broke at the time and should not have bought it. An older gentleman saw her and started chatting. He complimented her dress and her choice of bags. Not in a creepy way, just appreciating her fashion sense. He asked if she was a stylist or worked in fashion. She began to cry, saying she had lost her job and was spending money she did not have just to feel better. The older gentleman offered to get her a coffee, and she agreed. He told her his nephew and niece had opened a thrift shop and were looking for help, and she accepted. She got the job, and soon other thrift stores were asking her to put looks together and style their mannequins. The older gentleman kept in contact, helped her create a brand as a stylist, and taught her basic financial literacy. She ended up going back to school, became an accountant, and life went on. Even now she says that if she had never bought that coin purse, her life would have been very different. She still has the coin purse, and Mr. Jones left her his Louis Vuitton collection in his will, among other things. He passed away 2 years ago. Story 63. I wouldn't want to guess how much I spent on cosplay. I used to be really into it and went to conventions. Nothing bad happened to make me quit. I just noticed I was having less fun, so I stopped. Perhaps I'll attend a few events once things are safe again for old time's sake. But I can't see myself being as into it as I once was. Still, I had a great time, met very nice people, and learned sewing and craft skills that I still use, so it was worth the money. Story 64. I spent $3 on a 2-foot-tall alien action figure and hid it behind my husband's monitor. He still has not found it, even though the alien's little feet stick out from underneath. His favorite movie is Aliens. My mother-in-law was with me when I bought it and asks weekly if he has found it. $3 well spent. Other than that, I do not waste money except on food delivery now and then. I grew up very poor, so I save every penny I can. Because many people asked, I showed the feet. He still has not noticed, and it has been several weeks. Story 65. I spent $5,000 I could barely afford on emergency surgery for my dying dog, knowing the outcome was likely his death. He still died, but I would do it again. He was my best friend, and I know I did everything humanly possible to help him. Story 66. I bought a $100 Christmas tree stand after my Walmart stand could not handle the absolutely colossal tree my wife wanted. I was so angry that I went on Amazon and found a German-engineered stand. Because of how terrible last year was, she wanted an even bigger tree to soothe her 2020 woes. That German-engineered tree holder was a real champion. The tree we got was over 12 feet tall. It took 4 men to pull it through the baling machine. When my neighbor and I dragged it into the house, we nearly broke our backs. The German-engineered tree stand was exactly as advertised. I might even buy a bigger one next year just to see its limits. Story 67. I got an Apple IIe computer from the early 1980s in 2019. I rarely use it, but I love that it is there. I added a picture to my profile for anyone interested in seeing it. Story 68. My keyboards. Do they magically type by themselves? Are they much better than a $20 rubber dome or even a $100 mechanical keyboard? Not at all. I absolutely love typing on them. The sound soothes my soul, and my slight wrist pain has subsided. It is a fun rabbit hole to dive into. I can never tell my friends or family how much I spent on them. This is my current collection of keyboards. My daily driver is a Sofal keyboard with Gazuboba U4 mechanical switches rated at 62 grams and MT3 white on black keycaps. MT3 is a keycap profile. Shout out to the Reddit community's ergomech keyboards and mechanical keyboards. Story 69, around $11,000 for a rug. It was a total impulse buy, but it is hand-knotted from 100% all-natural hand-dyed wool. It is massive and took about 18 months from start to finish to make. I love it. Story 70. I spent $30,000 on my new show horse. He is the easiest, most athletic, and most relaxed horse I have ever owned, and we are currently ranked second in the nation. He was a steal and worth every penny. Story 71. Every expansion pack of The Sims 4 costs about $400. Story 72. I sold everything, bought a sailboat, moved my family of 5 aboard, and spent 4.5 years cruising the Eastern Caribbean with them. I have no idea what the total cost was, well north of $100,000, but it was worth every penny. Story 73. Soon to be my NVIDIA GeForce 3080, with real-time ray tracing support or AMD Radeon 6800 XT if the stock situation allows me to spend the money. Story 74. I have traveled to more than 60 countries so far in my life, some for work but most were self-financed when I lived abroad. I feel very lucky for all those memories, especially now that I cannot really travel anywhere. Story 75. I was very depressed and did not want to do the dishes. I threw out 5 plates and a bunch of cups and just bought new ones. Story 76. A racing wheel for video games. I have not used it much, but the few times I did, it was awesome and incredibly immersive. Story 77. Although traveling may not be considered a waste of money, what I did while traveling was considered a waste by many of my family and friends. When I was 22, I decided I wanted to take a little trip out of town alone. I saved up a little over $1,000 from working a minimum wage retail job, bought a plane ticket, and flew out. All of my loved ones recommended New York City, Los Angeles, or Miami, but I did not want that. I wanted somewhere completely different from where I grew up and not a popular tourist destination, at least from what I had heard. So I picked Salt Lake City, Utah. I flew out, got a cheap motel room in a bad part of town, and just walked around as if I were a local. I did not care for flashy tourist hotspots. I wanted to see what life somewhere else was like. It was an amazing experience. As a native Texan, I had never seen snow or mountains. There were many Mormons, but they were just as friendly as the non-religious people I interacted with. It was the most walking I had ever done. I will never forget getting lost while walking around Provo in the snow, freezing, and wearing a pair of Chuck Taylor sneakers. It was the best day ever. After paying for the motel, the flight, and other things I bought there, I came home with a negative $350 balance in my checking account, and my loved ones asked why I had picked a boring place like that. I have no regrets. Story 78. I purchased a life-size movie prop of Han Solo frozen in carbonite in the late 1990s. Cost more than the car I drove at the time. The car died a long time ago. Han sits behind my desk in my office, and I enjoy it every day. Story 79. My SPHYNX, which cost $2,800, had to have a surgery costing $3,200 at age 3 to save his life. I love that little rascal. Story 80. 4 years ago, I spent $1,300 on a holiday I was supposed to take with my ex. We broke up 4 months before the trip because she had cheated. I told her about it and she almost cried because she would miss the trip. It was a place she had wanted to visit badly. Instead of going by myself, I spent $163 to travel to a neighboring country to visit a friend with benefits. My friend with benefits and I have been in a relationship since then, and we married a month ago. Now we are saving to buy a house and to have a baby. Story 81. $900 to fly across the country to visit an ex-partner. I realized she really did not care about me anymore as soon as I looked into her eyes. We had dinner and chatted. It helped me let go and move on. I have not spoken to her since. I rarely think about her anymore. Story 82. Okay, a little background. Growing up, our family was dirt poor, much poorer than people imagine. It was common to go without food. We lived near the fairgrounds in Spokane, and when the fair came to town, we would break in and walk the grounds because we could not afford food, rides, or concessions. Often we helped tear the fair down, and the carnies would sometimes toss us a couple of dollars for helping. Later, I became a drafter and received my first bonus in 1990, $1,000. In today's money, that is about $2,000. I took that money to the fair and spent it all. At the end of the night, I had a bunch of ride tickets left over, which I handed to a kid wearing the shoddiest clothes I could find and told him to have a great night. This was after I had been on all the rides, vomited twice, and ended up with a tote bag full of meaningless trinkets. Postscript: sorry, I do not have a story about buying a yacht and exploding it. Simple person, simple life. Story 83, my wedding shoes. I have always loved designer clothes and shoes, but I was always too poor to afford them. My husband and I were paying for our own wedding, so we were on a tight budget. I spent days researching which designer shoes were the most comfortable because I wanted to make sure I could wear them more than once. They also had to be tall because I wanted to be almost face to face with my husband, who is 6'4", when we said our vows. I eventually found a gorgeous pair of Jimmy Choo platform wedges that were absolutely perfect. They were only $150 used on eBay. After I bought them, the recommended products section showed a pair of neon pink Prada wedges that were not right for the wedding, but I loved them because neons are my favorite. They were brand new and only $80. I showed them to my husband and he rolled his eyes, but seeing how much I wanted them, he suggested I get them for the reception and the honeymoon. Our wedding was the perfect excuse to get them, and I will probably never be able to buy shoes that expensive again. I bought both pairs. I still love them and wear them several times a year. I feel so fancy when I wear them. Story 84. Not such a waste if you ask me. It was to fix our car. It is a reliable car that had not been taken care of. 5 months ago it was almost undrivable. Now it runs like new and everything works. We were offered twice the normal amount for it, but I am not giving it away. Story 85. I spent around $7,000 trying to save my dog. She needed 2 surgeries, many nights of hospital care, and extensive imaging and testing. She did not make it, but I could never forgive myself if I had not tried. It has been over a year now, and I miss her constantly. Rest in peace, Jude. Story 86. My Mandalorian armor. Even in a year without conventions, I fucking love it. Story 87. I worked a job for a year and a half at a 6-figure salary and saved up a good chunk of money. Then I got laid off. Instead of doing the smart thing and immediately looking for another job, I realized I had enough money to survive for a while without income. So I spent the last month sitting around, smoking weed, playing video games, masturbating, hanging out with friends, watching movies and shows, reading, and so on. Part of my brain says this is foolish, but another part notices I am more relaxed than ever. I am starting to reevaluate my life, having insights about my upbringing and ways of thinking. I am thinking about other jobs that might align with what my soul wants. I am 38. For the first time in my life, I had a month of being lazy. The amazing thing is I think I finally had enough of video games and weed. In the last week or two, I started to feel bored with that stuff. I feel an actual drive to go out and engage with complex things, which I have never felt before. I cannot overemphasize how amazing it is to feel my mind want to go out the front door. Over the decades, I built the strength and discipline to march out that door and face the day. But now, for the first time, I feel drawn. Maybe I am being a moron, and maybe when I am homeless, which would be the second time, I will be thinking, why didn't I start looking on Indeed immediately after losing my job? But I am starting to think my instinct to be lazy is not so horrible after all. Turns out I do have an instinct for activity. I just needed to rest before I felt it again. It feels like all the moments when I craved coming home and disappearing were because I never quite got my fill of that growing up. Now I can understand how the kids who took a few months off on their parents' funds felt. I can see why they had such passion to create, why they were so interested in becoming someone significant, and why they placed so much emphasis on relationships and community. They were operating in Maslow's second level while I lived in the first. Story 88. I paid $750 to spend about an hour with gorillas in the Rwandan jungle. A mother with her baby clinging to the hair on her chest was so close she stepped on my foot as she walked past. I was speechless. Story 89. Taking my young child to Disney World twice was an unforgettable experience. The joy and memories cannot be replaced. Story 90. 4 years ago, I won some money and decided to take my dad on the trip of a lifetime to Las Vegas. I spent a lot of money on 10-hour flights and a week at the beautiful Wynn Hotel. My boyfriend and my best friend came too. The day we arrived, I began to feel unwell. I came down with a horrendous virus and even had paramedics come to the room because I was so ill. I spent the entire week in bed and could not eat any of the buffet food. Meanwhile, my 73-year-old father had the time of his life with the two men. He had amazing dinners, a helicopter trip to the Grand Canyon, and a visit to Zion National Park. He talked about it for months afterward and still says it was the greatest trip of his life. It took me almost 3 years to recover. The virus left me with a chronic illness, but it was worth it. Story 91. When I was 14, I had a choice of two high schools. One was public and in my town, versus a higher-rated private one 20 minutes away. I had planned to attend the public school because it was free and convenient, but I was offered a full scholarship to the private school, so I accepted. Even though tuition was free, the school still cost my family money and time for commuting. We had to buy a specific model of laptop that the private school required, and we also had to purchase uniforms and textbooks, whereas public school textbooks are free. Every extracurricular activity had a fee, and the school held frequent fundraisers that we always had to contribute to. We were nickel and dimed throughout my high school education, and the difference in quality between it and the public school was small. There is one reason I do not regret it. In my sophomore year, I met a student 1 year older. We became friends, kept in touch after he left for college, and began a long-distance relationship. We are married now. Our hometowns were 25 minutes apart. We had no friends in common, did not share similar hobbies, and attended colleges on opposite sides of the country. We would not have met if I had not gone to that high school. Story 92. My cat. I adopted her for $125 when I was a teenager. I pay monthly insurance for her and buy top-quality food, a harness, and a leash for walks. I do not always have the money to spend on her, but she is my best friend. To see her little eyes bat as she nuzzles my face to wake me, to have her come running when I am stressed or need comfort and jump up purring on my chest, and to have small conversations all day when she meows and I meow back is the best thing I have done for my health. I think she is happy to live with me. Story 93. I bought a Paul Reed Smith guitar, and I am not a very good player. In fact, I am significantly worse now than I was when I bought it 20 years ago. I do not care. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.